Must be the money that's turning me out. Must be the money. Must be the money. That's. Cause we're back. We're back. One of my favorite athletes of all times, Neon Deion Sanders. This is before the whole prime time era, but that's what we used to call him, Neon Deion. And he was an unbelievable, as you know, that's probably listened to me, athlete. But sometimes, unfortunately, like with my school, Norfolk State University is going through right now with Michael Vick, just because you are a great athlete and a great professional athlete at the highest level, that doesn't necessarily mean that it transitions over to being a great coach. What do I mean? Well, let's see. This is his third year there at Colorado with the Buffaloes. And, he had pretty decent records earlier on. This year, they're really failing. Of course, they don't have his son, either one of his sons, Shador at quarterback or Shiloh at safety, or Travis Hunter playing both ways. But he still does have himself. He's the coach, right? But coaching doesn't always, like I said, translate into winning games. So let's just take a look at what Coach Prime has done this year. It's just because I love sports and, originally, like if anybody's been following the journey I've been on as far as, with this pod, is that originally that's what I wanted to do was talk, a lot of sports. And, just like any other guy, especially in a city that has all four major sports teams, although I probably wasn't going to be speaking about hockey too much, but still talk about, just the different relevant stories about sports. So let's see. Unfortunately, let's just start the season off. They started the season off with a 27-20 loss to Georgia Tech. Now, Georgia Tech was ranked at the time 16th, so okay, all right, well, close game. Then they beat the University of Delaware 31-7. Okay, that was a good comeback. Then they lost to the University of Houston 36-20. They beat Wyoming 37-20. They lost to an eighth ranked BYU 24-21. So, once again, a respectable loss, if you want to call it that. But here's where the wheels started really falling off. They lost to TCU 35-21. They followed it up with a 24-17 win against Iowa State. And here's where it's gotten bad. They lost 2 weeks ago to Utah 53-7, and they lost Saturday to Arizona 52-17. So I'm just going to do the quick math on this. So over the last two games, they have been outscored 105-24. 105-24. Couple things what people will say is that in sports, the team gave up on them. Or it's just that they're just not as talented. They're not talented enough to keep up with the rest of, the people in college football that they happen to be playing, the other teams, the programs. So for me, what are my thoughts? Is that I think that he's dealt with a lot of health issues, and there's no front with that. When you're sick, when you're hurt, especially when it's physical, it's really hard to get over because you still got to move. He has to walk the sidelines a lot. He has a lot of things to do. So it's hard to get over. So even as great of a football player that he was in the best shape of his life, being a coach, yes, is more mental, but you got a lot of different things to direct. Yeah, you got an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and all of that other kind of stuff. But, there has to be, first of all, you have to have the talent. And, of course, his son was a pretty good talent. But you have to have the talent, especially at quarterback. But then also on defense, people put up 50 points on you 2 weeks in a row. It's not good. Not good, especially when, you're a top program that gets, has good donors, has good all this other kind of stuff. You have an amazing salary. So that's going to be looked at a little harshly. But in my estimation, I feel like, and this is just my thoughts because I'm not connected to anything. What do I know? But I feel like either between this year and next year will probably be Deion's last year coaching, especially at Colorado. I think barring some major turnaround, that, I think that he's done probably as much as he could do for the program as far as getting it back on track, giving them some more notoriety. But I just think that at this point, his main concern has to be his health. It has to be, because, it's different when, you may be having some health issues, but you're able to, whatever you're doing is able to sustain the same high level of work that you need to have sustained, And also, too, to be honest with you, and this is no knock on anybody in Colorado, I just really don't think a lot of kids want to go out there. I think a lot of the kids would prefer to go to, like, if they do want to go to a cold weather place, the Ohio States, the Michigans, possibly Penn States, things like that. And then the rest of the kids are just basically down south. Like even programs that were good before, like Syracuse and, other schools that were, further up north. Kids just don't want to, be around that cold weather if they can go somewhere like in Alabama, like a Clemson in South Carolina, just different schools, or Georgia, or even out on the West Coast at USC, UCLA for the lesser part of it, where they know that they can go to a program where the weather is also suitable, where the nightlife, because let's face it, that's what a lot of these kids are into, where it's just certain things are just more suitable for the college athlete. So I think that that's a big issue with his. But so for me, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if, I heard about him stepping down later this year or next year, at the end of this year or next year. Because I think it is. I think that, with health issues and things like that, it just starts to wear on you, especially as you get older. And I'm telling you, like, a guy being in his 50s, like, you really do. You look at life, especially after you have a health scare, you look at life in a different way. You process things in a different way than you did even when you were in your 40s. Because, stuff starts to hurt. Like even me, when I got my legs shattered and my hips shattered and stuff like that, like, that hurts. Do you know how hard it is to focus on stuff when the biggest focus you're worried about at that time is, I don't want to fall while walking? And when you talk about rehab, and then with him having bladder cancer, and he's saying sometimes he has to wear Depends and just different things like that, then he's walking up and down the sidelines for miles. So I think it's less of an indictment to me on his coaching prowess and more on when you have physical ailments, it's just sometimes some of those things are just tough to get over. And as we all get older, just regular everyday life gets tougher. You know how the game goes. You know what I'm saying? You roll over, you get out the bed, and you start doing one of those, ugh. Or you get out and you like how grandma used to be, or grandpa. You be like, oh. You find yourself doing that more after you get 50 years old. You know what I'm saying? You're, oh man, woo. You do some of that stuff. Like, woo, it's a relief. So tell me in the comments what you think. Uncle Harry, a couple of them big sports guys I know. I want to hear what you guys have to think also. If you think that, this is probably closer to the end as far as coaching for Deion, or hey, listen, do you think he has another 5 or 6 years in him coming up consecutively, and possibly before, he can kind of grapple with those health injuries or health scares that he has going on? But you tell me what you think. And while you're thinking about telling me something, let's think. Because I know, I never coached college football. I never even coached football at all. I coached a little basketball. And guess what? I didn't do that great of a job at that either, because they were little kids. But hey, you just make sure that you continue to live life. Don't let life live you.